Hello and welcome to another edition of the ICU Video Virtual Roundtable. My guest today is a 5-time CIS national champion as a player, 3-time ACHA champion as a head coach, and is heading into her 11th season as head coach of the MacEwan Griffins, Lindsay McAlpine. Lindsay, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on here, Wyatt.
Let's start with a little fact or fiction. The 2010 smash hit All I Do Is Win by DJ Khaled was written about your hockey career. Fact or fiction?
Definitely fiction.
Jumping back to the end of last season, I think a lot of teams will tell you it's disappointing because they were chasing a championship before COVID. But I don't know if any team in the country was any closer than your Griffins were to capturing a four-peat. You guys were up 2-0 in the best of 5 and hadn't been scored on. Does it leave just a little bit more of a sour taste in your mouth knowing you were knocking on the door of another championship?
Yeah, at the outset when it first happened and I got the phone call at 11:30 that morning that the game was a no-go, I was absolutely heartbroken and devastated and, to be honest, quite nervous to tell my fifth years, first off. And I think the more I thought about it and reflected on the season, it was the best season we've ever had at MacEwan, with me as the head coach and with that group. And I think a lot of great things to take from it and walk away from and be proud of.
Your team leaves the ACAC now. They're 3-time champions. We can put an asterisk beside the 4 if you like. But you move on to the CIS, a league you're very familiar with as a player. Do you think your success that you had in the ACAC is going to automatically translate, or is it going to take a little while to get familiarized with the league?
Oh, it's not going to automatically translate. I think we talk about a lot with our players right now and our sports psychologist and kind of leadership coach about changing initially our definition of success. I don't think we're heading into next year gunning for a Canada West banner. That would be amazing, of course, but I don't think that's reality. I think it's a very different league. Making a jump into a league where players are playing for 5 years and not 1 or 2 years like you see in the ACAC. So, an 18-year-old and a 23-year-old are significantly different players. And I think that's where it's going to take a little bit while to get our feet wet.
Fair to say that you're looking forward to taking on a former team of yours and former head coach and Howie Draper next season?
They're obviously one of the top teams in the entire nation and have been for the entirety of their program, coming on 25 years here. And we know they're strong. They've got a great core. Howie's been there for the entire time. They're going to be, an awesome challenge for us. And I hope that one day it can build into a crosstown Edmonton rival.
Are you going to be leaning on him for any advice during this next adventure in your coaching career? And you mentioned that it's going to take a little while to get your feet wet. How many years do you think it is before you guys will be one of the stronger competitive teams in the Canada West?
To answer the first part, I've leaned on Howie off and on throughout my entire coaching career and even previous to getting into coaching MacEwan. So I'm sure I will continue to lean, and I don't think we'd have any problems working together in that sense. And in terms of number of years, I've been asked that a few times, and it's a really, tough thing to predict. So would I love to say in 5 years we're fighting for a consistent spot in the playoffs? Absolutely. Is that reality? I don't know. And I think we're going to have to see how recruiting goes over these next 3 to 5 years. But you look at a team like Mount Royal, who's, made some significant gains in I think it's 8 years now that they've been there. So I think that's something for us to absolutely to fight for and to make a goal.
You mentioned the difference in recruiting now. Is it any different, or do you see an uptick of players now interested in joining the MacEwan program since you've been to CIS?
Definitely. Definitely a change in the type of player that we're going after now. So I just think there's more interest. And I think one area that it stems from is just the knowledge of the league. U Sports and Canada West as a whole, obviously as a national organization, touches a lot more people than the ACAC. So that's an area that I think has just increased the amount of contact to me, not necessarily me to players, but I think the players that will engage with me in, the conversations around coming to MacEwan has also changed and increased.
You played 5 years with the U of A Pandas. Do you have a favorite moment or any series of them? I know you guys had quite a lot of winning over there, but is there anything that stands out above the rest?
I think always your fifth year tugs a little bit more at your heartstrings. You invest so much time and a huge portion of your life into that team. And my final championship is probably the one that I can recall the most. Besides the, games were awesome, championships were great. I think my continued friendships and lifelong friendships are probably the thing that I hold closest to me. And as you can see from my coaching staff, every single one of them was a Panda at one time or the other. That's come to the dark side of MacEwan. So, and I've stayed very close with a lot of them, seen a lot of them have, go on, have families, get married, been at weddings, been at baby showers. So it's fun to just kind of watch us all kind of progress through our lives and stay connected.
How hard is the grind of balancing hockey while also being a student? And do you think that your time being at the U of A and being a player while studying helps you understand their struggle just a little more?
I absolutely like to think so. I think it's probably one of the hardest things. And I look back, into that phase of my life, and I wonder if I could ever do that again. I actually have almost a 2-year-old at home, and I think it kind of sets you up for the intensity of that. But I think it also sets you up for so many things in your work life. And we talk about that all the time, and it's hard when you're in it to understand, what you're getting out of it. But I think reflecting back, lots of those players will see how impactful their time was managing school and athletics and life and community service and the tons of things that we put on them.
I've been around women's hockey now for a couple of years. No, I couldn't come even close to you, but I've seen the AAA, ACAC, and now heading into CIS, and I think that women's hockey can get a bad rep by people who've probably never watched a single game. Why do you think that women's hockey just simply hasn't gotten the respect it deserves yet?
Oh, that's a big question, Wyatt. I think, unfortunately, part of it's just embedded in our societal norms of sport and masculinity. I wrote segments of my entire thesis on this area of women's hockey and the game in general. But I think it's definitely trending in the right direction. The game itself and the hockey IQ required and the passing and phenomenal game to watch. And like you said, you're, now well invested and entrenched in the women's game. And I think it just takes people to come out and watch and see athletes that are equally as passionate.
I think you've had a lot of time to get to see them develop. You're heading into your 11th season as a head coach. When did you know that you wanted to be a head coach, or was there a moment, or was this all the way back in your younger days?
You know what? No, it wasn't. I never ever thought that was on my kind of life track. I finished my phys ed and education degrees at the U of A and went on and, got a job right away out of school. I was fortunate, got a, kind of my dream phys ed social job, even got to work a little bit of hockey. But I was still doing my master's. I wanted to finish my master's to see if potentially I wanted to go into the university kind of professor world. So that's where I initially wanted to go after I finished my thesis and defended that and, considered my PhD. But at that time when I was a graduate student, I helped Howie out a little bit as, kind of a graduate assistant coach. I didn't travel, just kind of came, pushed pucks, helped out in practice, gave some feedback, pretty small role. But I'd always worked with younger athletes, kind of coached various teams from the time I was probably 16 and up, helping with whether it was hockey camps or a novice team or a peewee team. And then it kind of just expanded and grew. Did a bit with Hockey Alberta. And then I was actually working at Bimmy Ridge Hockey Academy, and someone asked me, are you going to consider applying for the MacEwan job? The head coaching position just opened. They have a new athletic director. And, I instantly said, no, that's not a career that I'm interested in. I like my evenings and weekends back. I'm happy with it. It's nice to move away from that as I was, absorbed in that fully as a student athlete. And I went home and I was like, maybe I'll just throw my name in and see. I'm really young, though. I'm not sure it's going to be what they're looking for. And here I am 11 years later, and it was the best career decision I've ever made. And I love what I do. I can't imagine at this point in my life doing something different.
And coaching hasn't just kept you busy here in the frozen north. You've also had a chance to coach down under, even winning the D2B Women's World Championship. What was that experience like?
It was probably the craziest coaching experience I've ever had. First of all, I was, flown across halfway across the world, all the way around the world to to Melbourne, Australia, to meet. I want to call them a ragtag group of hockey players, very different from what we're used to, where hockey's so embedded in our culture. And there it was basically a brand new sport, especially for women. So our group, our national team, I had a week to select a team. Not that we had a ton of options. We probably had 50 skaters total for a team of 20 to 25. I think our youngest was 14 and our oldest was 40. And some, the levels were played for 4 years all the way to, we had 3 players that had played Div 1 in NCAA. So a really big range to try to coach, but definitely learned a lot and met some amazing people and experience I'll never forget.
You're also the co-founder of High Tempo Hockey at Edmonton, an all-female hockey camp, which is in its 19th year now. What ages do you train? And take us through what a camp looks like.
Yeah, you know what? I love that. That's actually what kind of one of the areas that got me started in coaching. I worked leading up to the summer of my first year with U of A. The owner back then was one of our assistant coaches at U of A. And, we run camps anywhere from very beginners, so learn to play camps, 3 and 4 year olds, all the way to basically on the flip side of that, learn to play for adult women. So it's obviously, like you mentioned, all females, ages 3 to whenever you want to start learning to play. So we only do a couple of women's camps, but run primarily in August, kind of for 2 or 3 weeks, heading back into the season. And then we do some winter stuff. But we have the full day camps for kids. We've got skills camps. So sometimes you come for an hour and a half ice session. Sometimes you're there with us the whole day, doing a little bit of power skating, some off ice stuff, back on the ice doing skills. And one of my favorite parts of that camp now is I've taken a slight step back in the instruction role. I'll only work with the college prep camps and the older kids primarily.
Where can parents or players interested find out more?
HighTempoHockey.com.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. And thanks for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great one.